This is Embrace Your Inner Boldness, a podcast about remembering who you were before the world told you who to be. I'm Melissa Henning Frank, coach, guide, and founder of Becoming Bold. I help you strip away the conditioning, reclaim your voice, and rise into the power that's always been yours. Let's get right to it. Hey, thanks for tuning in. I'm really glad you're here today because this episode, I think it's one of those that's going to really stick with you. And I say this because once you hear it, you're going to start seeing things differently and you can't unsee it. So we're talking about behavior as a language. Specifically, we're talking about what happens when the people you lead start acting in ways that frustrate you or confuse you, or honestly, just make your job harder, and what it means when you decide to get curious about it instead of just reactive. This is part one, the leader's lens. Part two is going to flip the script and go deep on the employee experience. So if you're a leader who also happens to be someone's employee, which most of us are, you're going to want that one too. So let's get into it. So here's the thing. When someone on your team starts acting differently, pulling back or getting defensive or missing deadlines, snapping in meetings, our first instinct as leaders is usually to categorize it. We decide pretty quickly what kind of problem this is. Is this a performance problem? Is it an attitude problem? Or is it a do they even want to be here problem? And I get it. You've got things to manage. You've got results to hit. You have a team that's counting on everyone to carry their weight. The pressure to just handle it can be overwhelming. But here's what I want to offer you today. What if the behavior isn't the problem? What if the behavior is actually a message and you've been so focused on stopping the behavior that you haven't stopped to understand the human behind it? Think about it this way. When a toddler throws a fit, we don't just punish the tantrum and move on. We ask what's going on. Are they tired? Are they hungry? Are they scared? Are they overwhelmed? The behavior is communication because they don't have the words yet for what they're feeling. I often say that leadership is a little bit like parenting, but here's what we don't think about. Adults in the workplace are doing the same thing. They just look a little more sophisticated about it. So instead of a tantrum, it's maybe radio silence. Instead of crying, it's a sharp email or a DM with a tone. Instead of clinging, it's suddenly needing approval on every single decision. So behavior is the language. And most leaders are rushing to fix it instead of slowing it down and getting to the root of it. Let me give you some real examples from my time in the HR trenches. And I want you to think about someone on your team as I go through these, because this is going to connect differently when it has a face. So think about the employee who suddenly goes quiet. They used to have opinions and now they just kind of nod. They stopped contributing in meetings. They do the work, but just barely. What does that behavior usually say? I tried to be heard and I wasn't, so I stopped trying. Disengagement almost always has a moment of origin, a time when someone raised their hand, literally or figuratively, and the response that they got told them it wasn't worth it. The employee who suddenly needs everything in writing, every conversation followed by an email recap, every ask documented, every commitment confirmed. This one can read as passive-aggressive or overly rigid, and what it's usually saying is, I don't feel safe here and I'm protecting myself. Something happened, maybe it wasn't even intentional, that told them they can't trust the environment, and trust issues are a really hard problem to solve. What about the employee who's resistant to every single change? Every new initiative gets pushed back. Every shift in direction is met with skepticism. Leaders read this as someone who just doesn't want to grow. More frequently, though, it's someone who's been burned before. Someone who gave themselves to a vision that didn't pan out, or a leader who didn't stay, or a company that made promises it didn't keep. And then there's the employee who's suddenly reactive, snapping at their colleagues, sending emails with a little too much edge, getting defensive when feedback is offered, and the behavior reads as hostile. But more often than not, that is overwhelm. It's someone who's running on empty, and they've lost the buffer that normally sits between their feelings and their actions. Something in their world, work or personal, has used up all of the grace that they had. Now, none of this means that behavior doesn't have consequences. It does, but there's a difference between addressing behavior because you need the team to function and addressing behavior because you actually want to understand the human behind it. One approach fixes the symptom. The other one has a chance at fixing the root. So what do you actually do with this? The first thing, and this sounds simple, but it's genuinely hard in practice, is to create a pause between what you observe and how you respond. So before you decide what the behavior means, before you start thinking about documentation or conversations with HR, just ask yourself, what might this person be trying to tell me that they don't have the language for? That question alone changes the energy you bring to the conversation. The second thing is to actually have the conversation and not the I've noticed some things and we need to talk conversation that signals someone's in trouble. It's, hey, I've been seeing you carry something lately and I wanted to check in conversation. There's a big difference between those two, and the person you're talking to knows immediately which one they're in. You don't need to be a therapist. You don't need to solve their personal problems. You just need to be a human who sees another human and says, I noticed something's different. How are you actually doing? And then, this is the part leaders usually mess up. You have to shut up and let them answer. Not rush to reassure, not jump to solutions. Just receive what they give you. And then the third thing, pay attention to patterns, not just incidents. One sharp email might just be a bad day, but a month of pulling back is a pattern. Patterns are the big thing to notice about this language. They're telling you that something has shifted, not just as someone had a rough day. Here's the part I really want you to consider before we close out part 1. The reason this work matters, the reason seeing the human behind the behavior is a leadership skill and not just a nice thing to do, is because every person on your team is watching how you handle the hard moments. And they're making decisions about whether it's safe to be honest with you, whether it's worth bringing their real self to work, whether this place has room for them when they're struggling. Your behavior is a language too. The way you respond when someone's off their game, whether you lean in or pull back when things get uncomfortable, whether your team sees you extend grace or make an example. They're reading you constantly. So the invitation at the end of this episode isn't just to see your employees differently, it's to think about what your own behavior might be communicating to them, because the culture of any team starts there. All right, part 2 is coming right behind this one, and this one is for the employee. So it's for the person who's been on the other side of a leader who didn't ask, who's been trying to communicate something for months through their behavior because they didn't feel safe enough to just say it. So if that's you, or you know someone who needs to hear it, send them part 2. And until next time, please be kind to your mind.
That's it for today's episode of Embrace Your Inner Boldness. If this stirred something in you, don't let it fade. Screenshot this episode, tag me at Becoming Bold LLC, and share it with someone else who's ready to rise. And hey, if you haven't already, take a second to subscribe, rate, and review the show. That's how we spread the boldness and keep this movement growing. Whatever came up for you today, feel the fear and do it anyway. You don't need to wait for perfect timing or permission. You are powerful. You are ready. And remember, the only limit to your boldness is the one you set for yourself. Until next time, stay bold, stay curious, and keep becoming you.